Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a virtual training webinar hosted by VA-OSDBU and the Strategic Outreach and Communications Program. Please note, all participants will remain muted for the duration of this session. If you experience any connectivity issues while logged in, we suggest disconnecting and logging in again. If that does not resolve your issue, please use the WebEx dial-in and access code to rejoin the session. This session will be recorded, and a copy of the presentation, as well as a link to view the recording, will be made available to you within 48 hours. Please take a moment to locate the Q&A panel and chat window on the lower right side of your screen. Please only use the Q&A window to type your questions for the panelists, and only use the chat feature for brief networking, introductions, and kudos. At the conclusion of today's event, you will be prompted to complete a brief survey. We greatly appreciate your feedback. Before we begin, I would like to welcome Mr. Curtis Brandon with Strategic Outreach and Communications and Program Federal Lead of the Direct Access Program, who will provide opening remarks on behalf of VA-OSDBU and introduce our presenters for today's training webinar. Welcome, Mr. Brandon.
Thank you, Amanda. Greetings and good afternoon from the Department of Veteran Affairs, Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. On behalf of our leadership, we thank you for your participation in today's virtual training webinar. VA-OSDBU remains committed to employing innovative methods to promptly inform you about relevant procurement opportunities, training, and information. Virtual events we conduct would not be possible without the support of industry partners and programs like USACE. We are grateful they have made time in their busy schedules to host today's event. Strategic Outreach and Communications is dedicated to small business readiness through programs, outreach events, and educational and training. We routinely conduct a variety of engaging online events designed to facilitate meaningful interactions and foster relationships. We encourage all to continue to visit our website to stay updated on upcoming events and valuable information to connect and collaborate. We also extend our thanks to everyone who supports the department in its mission to serve our nation's veterans. Back over to you, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brandon. The USACE team may begin.
Hi, and thank you for having me. Let me turn my video on. So yes. So real quick, I forgot to ask that question. When it comes to flipping through slides, will we just say next slide? My apologies for missing that earlier.
That's okay. Yes, you can just say next slide.
Okay. So if we want to go to the next slide, we'll look at the agenda. Well, title and then agenda. So what we'll do is these are different sections we're going to go through. We're going to introduce ourselves first. I'll start with Tamika Gray, and then I'll go with myself. I'll go through a couple sections, and I'll pass the baton over to Tamika to close it out. At the end, we'll have questions and answers, and then we'll both sort of tag team that to the best of our abilities. Next slide. And Tamika, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Tamika Gray. I am one of the small business professionals here within the Baltimore district. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to presenting. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you. And I'm the other small business professional for USACE Baltimore district. I will say, if you ever work with USACE in the past, it's very common districts and centers have one small business professional. And you'll see later on in our slides, pretty much we do a lot of work, which is why we have two. Actually, we have 2.5, and we'll explain later on that note. Next slide. So now, before we dive deep into Baltimore, we want to talk a little bit about USACE, especially for folks that are not familiar with what it is we do. Next slide. So USACE, we're Army Corps of Engineers. We don't wear suits. We are Army civilians that primarily supports the Army's mission, but we do work for other agencies through IIS, Interagency International Support, or it might be the other way around. But pretty much this is just, and it's from our headquarters website, what our mission is. And then the bottom where it talks about engineering solutions, that's just our vision statement. But our big thing, we always say, and it's on our hard hats, on time, within budget, and safely. Next slide. So we are postured in an interesting way. We are a for-fee service agency, so we don't fund ourselves. Well, I'm overhead, but pretty much a lot of people are not funded. Agencies come to us an Army come to us to execute their projects. And that's how we sustain ourselves. So if people aren't coming to us, then we can't fund ourselves and we don't have a mission anymore. But that's why you see here in our structure, down from headquarters to division to districts, we're comprised of 35,299 employees, and out of that, 782 uniformed personnel. If you can look at it, but we're the small part of the pyramid, right? A lot of our support and how we get things done, we rely on contractors heavily. AE, architecture, engineering, 5,000 employees. And then, pretty much the construction, like 300,000, because that's what we do. We do have services, because we have recreational areas and dams and things like that, campgrounds to take care of. But primarily we do construction, which are vertical buildings that you see, which are horizontal projects, like not highways, it's Federal Highway Administration, but roads, parking lots, things like that, utilities, definitely. Next slide. Now, when you do get this presentation, hopefully it'll be attached to the invite. A lot of hyperlinks built into the slide deck, which I wouldn't go into here, but it'll be very good, useful information for anyone on this presentation to get to know us better. But the big thing here on this slide where we are, we're Baltimore district. So we're in the National Capital Region, right? Or DMV, as people say. But there's districts and centers all around the United States as well as around the world. So even if you say you reached out to us, like, Baltimore, I need help doing work in, I don't know, Portland, I can't answer much, but I can tell you who to talk to. Same with Tamika. That's why it's important, to try to determine where you would like to work. And then we will make sure that we guide you to the right people so that you can get your questions answered or ask about what opportunities exist that your company may be able to provide us with. Let's see. And then within this, I do say there's 4 centers, which I'm not 100% familiar with what they are, but within the notes of the slides that you'll see when you get the slide deck, it gives you some idea what those centers do. We have research and development. We deal with stuff like materials, soils. We're being the engineers that we are, a lot of in-depth experience, Army Corps as a whole. Next slide. So I know this is hard to read, and trust me, I want to make this easier to read, but this is the last org chart of all the small business professionals within the Army Corps of Engineers. This actually is as of February 20th. Now, if you have the slide deck, you can hyperlink to where it will take you to points of contact. I'm not saying that spreadsheet's going to be up to date. It's a little dated, but again, if you're looking to reach out to these people, you can reach out to Tamika or I. We'll be more than happy to direct you to the right people, again, so you can get in front of that audience, and find out more information, perhaps somewhere you can support. Next slide. And for here, I just kind of broke out that chart to try to make it a little more easier to see. We break it out by division, and within those divisions, we have districts and centers. Again, we're all around the world. You got the Far East, and where's that? Japan. You have Europe district in Europe. So we're everywhere. And the reason we also put this slide is, we put the DODAX, Department of Defense Activity Address Code. So when you search for opportunities, say you want to do work with Kansas City district, there's the DODAC. But I do caution, and it's within the notes of this presentation, you're not going to find too much. It's actually not the best way to search for us. With the DODAC, the important thing is you can then find what the office ID is. So for us, for example, and I put at the bottom, W2SD, NDIST, Baltimore, that's actually how you find out opportunities for our particular district or center. So that's why we put the DODAC so that you can find that office ID, and that's what you want to search for. Next slide. This is kind of a bragging slide, I would argue, but it just gives you an idea of what we obligate Army Corps as a whole. This is from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 24. We highlight purposefully Baltimore. Typically, we're top 5 every single year. Last year, we did $1.4 billion in business. This year, I mean, it's going to be a little less. I think we're between 1.5 and 2 billion. It really depends if we can get some of these awards in by the end of the fiscal year. But I just want to make a point with this slide that we're big. So if you're interested in doing work, not just in the National Capital Region, because we also have Fort Detrick over in Frederick, Maryland, and also Letterkenny Army Depot in Pennsylvania. So it's like South Central Pennsylvania. We're located there too. And we also have civil works boundaries that go all the way to the northern Pennsylvania, north central, as well as into southern New York. So we're, just because we're Baltimore, we do spread ourselves out depending on where, and we'll show you later, our military boundaries are and our civil works boundaries are. Next slide. And this is the last slide for kind of the overall USACE overview before we get into Baltimore, which is our bread and butter. We just took different links because there's a lot of information out there. These are all hyperlinked where the blue is. Gives you an idea of some useful information that you might find in terms of trying to do business with us, whether that's registering in our contractor database, whether it's figuring out what we say is our roadmap to success to try to get to reach out to us and then try to get a contract with us. But then there's particulars in here, right? We do dredging. We dredge national, federal navigable waterways. So if you have a dredge or you supply that type of mission, go to the dredging information system. If you do emergency response, we get folks that reach out to us all the time. Here's a link for emergency response and how to register with them. IT, we get a ton of IT, don't get me wrong, but we don't procure that much. At least Baltimore District does not. I'll say that now. But there's an informational page at the bottom there that you can go to and find out some more information on, okay, well, how could you support us? And I will say, the link that I thought was the coolest I never used up to this point when I was putting this presentation together was GIS data. It's actually very cool. It's open to the public. It provides geospatial data where we're located. You can click on it. Here's like the main point of contact. Here's the address. Here's the general phone number. Where are our dams located? Highly recommend to use that link. It's very useful, pretty cool stuff, especially if you're unfamiliar what it is that we do. So next slide. So now this is our transition slide. We're going to get into Baltimore District. So Baltimore, I'm not going to run through all these numbers because you all can read it yourselves later on. We're a little bit bigger, one of the biggest districts within the Army Corps, 1,100 civilian employees. We do federal navigation channels. We do flood risk management. We support 27 military installations and programs. Interesting things about us, I would say. We operate, if anyone's heard of the Washington Aqueduct, which is a very unique mission for us, provides drinking water to 135 million gallons daily to the District of Columbia, Arlington County, and portions of Northern Virginia. High visibility mission, no room for failure. So if you want to support us there, I'm more than happy to hear from you and connect you to the right people. We also have, we are given we have the luxury of lease and supporting all those armed forces career centers you see as you're driving through strip malls and things like that. We do those leases. So that's a very unique mission for us also. We also have the technical center, DoD National Relocation Program, to make sure military folks, those green suiters and whatnot, get from place to place as part of their mission. We help coordinate that. And I will say, if you do, we are one of the 5 centers of expertise for military munitions design. So we get a lot of folks reach out to us for that. But we also are a regional center of expertise for fire protection, HTRW, hazardous, toxic, radioactive waste, and radiological health facilities, secure facility designs, and subsurface. So if you have a secret clearance or if you have a top seeker, you're definitely want to reach out to us. We're always looking for folks like that because we deal with without any 3-letter agencies. That's what we say. Next slide. Oh, to the right. Sorry. There you go. Thank you. So this is our military boundary map. It's the best one I could find. It's the latest and greatest. Here's where our military boundaries are. But to the right, and you can read later on, those are where we support in Pennsylvania, Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Our military mission is huge, so I can say. And then if you, I don't know if I hyperlinked this, I didn't, but we'll provide you links later on how to get to this military boundary map. Next slide. So this is our civil works boundaries. And for those that want to know the reason why we extend where we extend to, it's based off watersheds. So all this civil works is based off both, I believe it's the Susquehanna watershed and the Potomac watershed, which is why we extend all through this, cut right through Pennsylvania, even though we have a Pittsburgh and Philadelphia district, down to the southern part of New York and out west to West Virginia. And these are all the dam and rec sites that we support as Baltimore district. And every district, pretty much for the most part, has their own dams and rec sites that they also support as well. Next slide. And this just is kind of our overall mission. We'll go into a little bit of detail through the next slides, but military, that's our bread and butter. Civil works is also a big thing what we do. IIS, interagency international support, and definitely environmental. Next slide. Not going to get into specifics here, but in terms of military programs, military construction, of course, a lot of operation and maintenance. So that can be gutting out a building and renovating it. You know, we do a lot of that too. A real interesting thing that we do is RSFO. It's pretty unique to us. Real Property Services Field Office. They do all the secured work. So again, if you have a clearance as a company or you do cleared work, you want to reach out to us. They do work with 3-letter agencies. And then real estate, we kind of briefly touched on it earlier with Armed Forces Reserve Centers, but they deal with things like easements, right-of-ways, and that stuff. Next slide. Civil works, the big thing with civil works, I mean, watching aqueduct, drinking water, that falls under it. A big part of those navigation, so that's our dredging contracts. That's when we do surveys. A lot of regulatory that we do under them as well. And then, you know, they have general construction. We do have construction at our dam and rec sites that we need from time to time, whether it's doing a repair or putting up like a rock wall, which is one of those projects that we're trying to do right now. Next slide. So IIS, pretty much this is the non-DoD agency coming to us that says, hey, we need your help. We need you to do our work. You know, whether it's doing the design, executing the construction, doing studies, we'll do it. We cost money, but we'll do it. You know, the big ones that we have right now, and you'll see later on, Bureau of Engraving and Printing, their currency production facility, which there's only 2 of those in the United States. So it is a big deal. And one thing that we do highlight here, we actually do work, you know, if they need us to execute for the VA. In this case, and as of today, we have a big project coming up. We believe it's fiscal year 28 for a community living center over at Perry Point, Maryland. So we do VA work as well. Next slide. Environmental, don't ask me what, other than with FUDs, don't ask me what these acronyms are. They're in the notes section. The important thing is we do a lot of environmental work, and as you get to learn how we do that, we do a lot of MATOCs or multiple award task order contracts, pretty much to build and execute our environmental piece, where we then do task orders pretty much to do everything. But our environmental goes all throughout the country because we are a center of expertise, or I think it's regional. But yeah, we go throughout the whole country. It's not just within our boundary. Next slide. And then these are just some highlights, which if you had the forecast, which it's in the backup slides and we'll talk about later, just highlights the big programs we're doing. I already mentioned the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and the VA. A lot of work at Letterkenny. So if you have a presence and you want to get some of that over South Central Pennsylvania, we have a ton of work coming up there. Joint Base Meyer Henderson Hall, lots of, I'd say multiple projects, a lot of housing projects for enlisted soldiers. And then a big one for us, ecosystem restoration, big civil works projects in the Chesapeake Bay. So if you've heard of it, like we're kind of been doing Popular Island for a long time, but it's a real success story and what we can do. And we're building these islands and why it's advantageous to have them in place. But now it's Mid-Barren Island and St. James as part of Mid-Chesapeake Bay. Next slide. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to remember if this is the handoff. Oh, this is my last section. Okay, small business office. Next slide. So we briefed this to our colonel, to everyone within our district, our kind of our highlights and then our initiatives. You know, we did 1.4 billion in fiscal year 24. 420 million of that is to small business. It's our highest ever dollar total and one of the largest in USACE. We do a lot of work with small disadvantaged businesses too. $298 million. Met our hub zone, we've been doing well. And we also track new entrants either to the government or to USACE, because that's important. And it's in a backup slide, but we use this term defense industrial base. Pretty much as we're trying to build firms that are interested, we're trying to get work to firms that are interested in doing work with us, because we need that competition. We need folks interested in wanting to do not just USACE, but the government as a whole. Because if that dries up, we're left with few competitors. It's going to be tougher going forward, trying to stretch out that dollar so that it can be then reallocated to other things that the military needs to do. In terms of initiatives for 25, one thing we'd like to highlight is this is a targeted outreach event for us. You know, we went out to the VA because they do a lot of work. Priorities are to both to service disabled and veteran-owned small businesses, right? We don't do well in service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. We get rated on that. And we do poorly. So we're hoping, and we're not just looking for those type of firms, but you know, that was the thought process with this presentation. We're always getting requests for capability presentations. We are doing our best to turn it around in terms of getting these scheduled, but we get a ton of requests and it's just hard, but we try our best. And importantly, we send out weekly notice to folks that present to us, that have reached out to us. Yeah, I mean, if you're a medium small or small, you might not have the capability to always check SAM, especially for Baltimore district, say what's going on. So we do it for you. We send that out weekly. We've been doing that for fiscal year 25. So I believe that's my part. Now I'm going to hand off the baton to Tamika to carry us to the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So this slide provides you all with information in terms of our top NAICS codes, things that we buy the most. For the most part, the Baltimore district is a military, civil works, construction, environmental, architect, and engineering type of procuring agencies. We focus on those areas the most. So this slide shows you the top 5 NAICS codes and how well we've done over the years. Another thing I wanted to point out is that for those on the call that provide engineering services, because you see that we have NAICS code 541330, we actually procured the multidiscipline piece of the A&E. It has to have the architect and engineering piece. It's not just necessarily the engineering or a separate architecture requirement. Next slide, please. These are our small business obligations as of the 21st. As you can see, it's a pretty large dollar in terms of our small business obligations. Sometimes, we have seen that number is either more than other districts' total obligations or comparable. We're just trying to demonstrate that we are a small business friendly organization, and we are totally interested in doing business with those of you who sell the services and supplies, limited supplies that we procure. One other thing I'd like to point out is that we used to have a director of Office of Small Business with the Army, who used to say that, hey, you can't take percentages to the bank, but you can take dollars to the bank. So again, we do pride ourselves on that. Next slide, please. Considering our target audience today is service-disabled veterans and/or veterans on behalf of the Office of Small Business for the VA, we wanted to talk to you about our obligations to that group. Next slide. These are our top 10 NAICS codes of which we procure from the service-disabled veteran-owned small business community. It's pretty much in line with the top 5 NAICS that we buy. It's a little off, but pretty much in line. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. Sorry, back it up. I didn't realize. Sorry. So Mike and I were really hoping that, you know, because of your status and the fact that he just mentioned to you that we are not doing well when it comes to our service disabled categories and accomplishments, we're hoping that you all are totally interested in doing business with the Baltimore district. This particular slide displays our ability and/or, if you want to say, inability to meet those goals. We did have some highs in the past, but we are currently in the low area as of this year. So we're hoping that by doing these targeted outreach events that Mike spoke about, that this will help us to attract more service-disabled veterans in doing business with the Baltimore district. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of you are like salivating right now and thinking like, oh, well, Tamika, Mike, we can help you to get your numbers up. Well, it's not that easy. I'll speak to it a little bit later, but basically we need you all to respond to our sources sought notices or any of our market research efforts so that we can establish the rule of 2. We need to have at least 2 service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses that are capable of performing the work. If we don't have 2, then we will never, please hear me, we will never have the opportunity to set this requirement aside for the service-disabled veteran-owned small business community. Next slide, please. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and get into doing business with us, the Baltimore district. Next slide. So the main takeaway from this slide is that there's actually a pecking order that the Veterans Affairs has to follow. We do business differently. The Veterans Affairs has what you all are probably familiar with called the Veterans First Contracting Program. And they have a specific order that they must follow when doing contracting. But for DoD agencies and for Baltimore specifically, there is no pecking order. There's no order of precedence. There's parity amongst the programs. So we follow FAR Part 19.203 that talks about acquisitions over the SAT, that they first must consider doing a set aside with 8A hub zone service disabled women prior to doing a traditional small business set aside. So again, the key takeaway, 2 different types of contracting processes between the Baltimore district USACE and what the Veterans Affairs has to do when they're doing contracting. Next slide, please. So here are some common acquisition methods that we use here at the Baltimore district. We definitely use standalone C contracts. And for those of you who are not familiar with that term, that entails lowest price technically acceptable, your invitations for bid, negotiated acquisitions in accordance with FAR Part 15. And what else? That's it for the most part. IDIQs, Mike alluded to the fact that we use a lot of IDIQs. Specifically, he talked about our environmental piece of it For environmental, we have what's called a multiple awards environmental services, IDIQ type contract. It consists of both large businesses and small businesses, but most of, I will say 99% of our environmental requirements are satisfied through the MAIS contract vehicle. Other IDIQs that we have here at the district, they can include, for an example, we have a $499 million MATOC. MATOC stands for Multiple Award Task Order Contracts because we do construction, thus the reason. We also have SATOCs, but back to the $499 million MATOC, that consists of, again, similar to the MEAS, both large and small business. It actually has a small business reserve component to it. We also procure using BPAs, 8A sole sources, up to 4.5 million to our traditional 8A small business contractors. And we have the luxury of going up to $100 million to Alaska Native corporations, tribally owned, Hawaiian owned. Those types of contractors allow us to go up to $100 million on a sole source level without a justification. Task orders, delivery orders, lots of those. We do those against those existing IDIQs. Some of those I spoke of previously. And we also do calls against BPAs. So a lot of you are probably familiar that the fact that VA uses the federal supply schedule and the GSA heavily, especially considering they have Schedule 65 and 70. Schedule 65 for medical supplies, but then 70 for information technology. I know that the VA uses those schedules. The Baltimore district and most of USACE does not. We do not use a lot of federal supply schedule buys. There are some, but it's very limited in nature. And Mike spoke to you about the fact that we do not buy IT. So I did put a link in the chat that can send you to a website that could provide you with additional information if you are an IT provider that provides anything dealing with the infrastructure, audio, visual, anything to that nature. Feel free to go to the link that I provided in the chat for additional information. We also, as Mike spoke about, considering that we're not doing well with our service disabled veteran-owned small business community, it's very hard, or it's far and few in between that the Baltimore district does any set-asides outside of traditional small business and 8A competitive. We are trying, and we hope that by doing outreach events like this, it will assist us to attract more folks, to help us to meet some of the goals that we have, and or just so that we can continue to champion the effort of supporting small businesses. Next slide. Maybe I have a different one, but okay. So here, some key takeaways from this slide is to ensure once you're registered in the SAM system for award management, that the information is up to date and current. Same thing with the dynamic small business search. These are some tools that are used for market research purposes. And if your information in your profile is not up to date, it could be a reason why you're not being considered for any of the business opportunities. Maybe your NAICS codes are missing. Maybe the certification information is not up to date. But these are all pertinent information that is necessary to be up to date so that we can identify you in our market research efforts. Do your homework. Know what we buy. I rattled off some of the things that we buy in terms of construction, both military and civil. Make sure that your firm's capabilities align with our business opportunities. The huge takeaway is to ensure that you're responding to our sources sought notices, our market research efforts, so that we can set requirements aside for service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Next slide, please. So this QR code, feel free to take a snapshot of it, but it takes you directly to our webpage. Next slide. Our website has some really good information. Guess what, Mike? The boundary maps are located on our website, so we don't have to worry about sending any links out. It's actually there under our useful links. The website also includes all of our awarded IDIQs to allow you all to see what contractors have contracts, IDIQ contracts with us. It will tell you who the contractor is. It will provide the contract number. It will also provide when the contract expires. This type of information is very helpful when you're trying to do your market research. You can look to see when could the government possibly be planning to put another IDIQ in place. So I find that to be helpful. Our forecast of contracting opportunity is there. I'm sure it was probably just updated yesterday. Mike prides himself on updating the forecast of contracting opportunities multiple times a year or multiple times a month. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. The website also shows you where we will be. And recently we had to reduce all of the locations that we were planning on participating in. So what you will find are virtual events that both Mike and I will be participating in. Last but not least, and other things that are listed there, but the helpful information and the links there, I believe you will find some value if you did take a look at our website. Next slide, please. So here are the 3 events we have scheduled through November. Even though it says Wilmington, North Carolina for the April 22nd, believe you me, I'm not traveling. I'm not going anywhere. According to regulation, we cannot travel, so I'm not going. We usually participate in that particular requirement. Next slide. If you're into social media, I'm not. These are the different avenues of which you can reach us. Next slide. So in conclusion, and you can go ahead and go to the next slide, both Mike and I, again, we want to thank you all for the opportunity to present to you today. We got excited ourselves considering we are in fact trying to increase our service disabled veteran-owned small business, the opportunities for you all, and ultimately the accomplishments for us. So here is our point of contact information. Here's a face to put with the name just in case you forget. And next slide. I believe that's all I have, and it's now questions. Yeah, questions and answers time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Gray, and thank you, Mr. Stearns, for your presentation. It was very informative on how to do business with USACE. We will now move into the question and answer portion of the presentation. Reminder to attendees to only use the Q&A window to type your questions. So the first question we have is, you're talking about searching DODAX for opportunities. Are these separate from opportunities outlined in SAM.gov? They keep telling us to use SAM.gov, and we are concerned that we are missing potential opportunities if there are other websites or databases that we should be searching.
Hey, this is Mike. Ideally, our forecast aligns up perfectly and gives people advance notice that we have these requirements and that we will be issuing the solicitation on SAM.gov. Doesn't always happen that way. I will say that if we do issue to government-wide point of entry, for us, that is SAM.gov, so the only time you might not see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tamika, would be like if we do an RFQ, request for quotation on, say, GSA eBuy, or if we're doing we're ordering like computers off of Chess, which is, I can't remember what the acronym is, but it's a mandated source for us. Other than that, everything's on SAM.gov. And the DODAC is how we identify our contracts. It actually identifies us as an activity. That's why I recommended you got to find the office ID. That's the key. So when you hone in on a district or center and say it's like, I don't know, St. Paul or Chicago, the office ID is what counts in terms of identifying all their requirements on SAM.gov. Over.
Thank you, Michael. The next question is from Emmanuel. How is the contractor database different from SAM and SBA database?
So I know what you mean. It's just another way for us to kind of, SAM is everyone, right? Anyone wants to do business with the government has to be registered in SAM. And then if you're a small business, ideally you should have a profile in the dynamic small business search under the SBA. Our database is kind of like our record of, who's reached out specifically to either USACE as a whole. And I'll tell you now, Baltimore, we have our own database. Our database consists of firms that have done presentations with us, because then we have capability statements and presentations to attach to it, other than just here's the basic information. Or firms that we have met at some of these events that we go to. It kind of helps narrow it down to those that we know a little bit about, or that we talked to. Just going on SAM or going on Dynamic Small Business Search, great, it gives you information. Here's people with the right NAICS code. They do work in the right location. If it's construction, they have the right amount of bonding. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're interested in doing work with us, even though they may be capable. So that's kind of why we do it. It's frustrating to folks. Like, I got to go register in this and that and that. It's just, I just highly encourage, get your name out there, get in the door with those folks that you're interested with. And then ideally you get the contractor, you get a subcontract and get that experience. So that's kind of my take with, yes, it's another database. But it's just different ways we can do our market research, is why we would recommend registering.
Thank you. Another SAM.gov related question. So are there better websites or portals than SAM.gov or FPDS.gov for sorting and identifying potential projects?
I mean, you could pay a third party, but we can't recommend that. It's up to each business and what value they get out of it versus trying to make that determination on their own. I know for every Army Corps of Engineers district or center, we have our forecast out there on our websites. Right now, it's Baltimore's is on Baltimore's, New York's is on New York's, New England's is on New England's webpage, which is frustrating, trust me. I know there is an initiative that's right now being worked on how we can consolidate those things, right? So that you're not having to go through 20 different websites, but unfortunately, it just is what it is. And I know from the headquarters level, Army Corps Office of Small Business Programs, they put out an update that consolidates all that, but twice a year. That might be fine for you, but things change probably every week, if not every day. As Tamika said, we pride ourselves on updating it monthly, but that monthly update is based off of, I update it probably daily. We just publish monthly. So unfortunately, that's just kind of how it is. I will say, if you are a non-DoD agency, or if you want to do work with a non-DoD agency, like say, even for example, Department of Interior, acquisitiongateway.gov, which is managed by GSA, that's actually a pretty good website of identifying also other potential opportunities typically how we phrase forecasted contracted opportunities. There's a lot of different ways to skin the cat. I think it's just whatever's going to work best for you. But just always remember that, our forecasts are just to kind of get you interested, to kind of let industry know what's coming down that pipe. SAM.gov is the actual action, right? Or GSA, depending on how they're procuring. That's what matters, because that's how you have to respond. That's where you're going to get the solicitation, the amendments, the attachments. So you always need to use that. Over.
Thank you, Michael. The next question is from Emmanuel as well. How does one get a clearance, TS or S?
For clearance, you have to be sponsored by a federal agency. Mike, is there somebody else that could maybe sponsor them? I think contractors can sponsor them as well.
Yeah, typically how it's worked is contractors, you're a sub, you work for a contractor that has a clearance, you build that relationship, they want to use you, right? In a good way, in this case. Then they would want, if you're interested in them being sponsored, because it's a whole process, and I'm trying to look at the reg that it's attached to. It's I think it's DOD. I'll type in the chat. Let me see. DOD fit. So that's the regulation, and I should have said what the name of that is. It's NIPSM. So that is the regulation. It goes into detail on how you have to get sponsored. What is it going to take? I think typically they're saying 180 days. I don't know if that's true. But it's not just getting the clearance. Right now, it's maintaining your clearance. It takes work. It takes time, right? It's kind of like a firm trying to get certified, CMMC, cybersecurity, maturity. It's a pain in the butt. But if it's worth it for you to do that, and someone's willing to sponsor you, at least for us, Baltimore, it opens more opportunities. I'm not saying it's going to be every Army Corps district or center. It just depends what their mission is and what work they provide. Over.
Thank you, Michael. So the next question is from Momo. As you discuss these specific projects, i.e. Henderson Hall, Meyer, etc., are those KOs, Levin, interested in hearing from subs, paint, plumbing, electric, etc., or are they just locking onto GCs that will find the subs and herd the cats?
So yes, we are looking for a prime that would be responsible for doing the subcontracting, for deciding whom they wanted to subcontract out to. We cannot direct any contractor unless it's a J&A, a specification or things of that nature, but we cannot direct any contractors on who to do subcontract out to. So you should be marketing those that provide the disciplines other than the major general construction code. Should be marketing the likes of Clark's, Balfour Beatty's, the larger firms that typically do business with the entire government to see if they need any subcontracting assistance. Mike, did you want to add?
I mean, I can't definitively say that, contracting officers wouldn't be interested with talking to a subcontractor, but it'd be highly unlikely. I will say that when we schedule capability presentations, it's like herding cats to get folks to join, to get in on these other than just talking to Mika and myself, which is fine. You can talk to us, but we don't make decisions at the end of the day. So also, in addition to what Tamika said, is it might be important, or I think it's important to, when we put our active IDIQ contract holders on our MAID talks, our SATE talks, or other terminology, JOCs, BPAs, reach out to those firms. We don't put point of contacts today. I wish I could, but I was told no. But but you can reach out to them. There might be opportunities from a subcontracting, because that's what you're looking for, that they might want to team with you, especially if you maybe, especially for a large business or other than small business, if you hold like a small disadvantaged business or I'm woman-owned, source disabled, they have subcontracting plans and they're supposed to meet certain goals with small businesses who they subcontract work out to. So that would be their interest in trying to perhaps subcontract with you if you're looking for subcontracting opportunities. I would also recommend look at what the awards are. I like sam.gov personally. You know why? Because it updates every day. FPDS, you can use that. Don't get me wrong. It's a 6-month lag. That's all I have to let you know. So it's probably too late. So I recommend Sam, find out who's getting these awards with these award notices that are put out by agencies. There might be then some subcontract opportunities that they haven't quite filled in at that time. So that's just my 2 cents. Over.
Thank
I
you,
wanted to
Tamika.
add one more thing. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting, Ernestine. But another thing to consider, Mike, we could also capture information about those who provide certain disciplines outside of the general construction code to help us shape subcontracting goals and or small business participation plan goals. So knowing that information and knowing that, there are small businesses and service disabled veterans or other firms that are participating on the call today that do provide those disciplines, I feel as though that could be beneficial information to help us. So I just wanted to add that part. Thank you, Ernestine.
Of course. Thank you, Tamika and Michael. The next question is from Lloyd. How do we sign up for weekly notices?
I guess I'll answer it since I send them out. Typically for the weekly notices we put out are firms that have done presentations with us, but it's not every firm's done a presentation with us. I mean, we also get firms that, hey, really looking forward to doing work with you guys. Here's my capability statement. Please keep me informed. And that's good enough too. That's no problem. Like, nothing wrong with capability presentation, but sometimes we just need something to attach, right? We just don't at least right now, unless we change how we feel we maintain data or vendor information. Put it this way, I'm not just, I received someone's business card and then I put it in our database and they're gonna get the weekly, because there's not much to go by with just a business card other than here's a point of contact, here's their title, here's their email, here's their phone number, right? In our database, we talk about what are they a small business? What NAICS codes do they work within? Do they do historical work? Do they have a clearance? What are their keywords and what their business does? So what's their bonding? It's a lot more involved with the stuff that's on your typical business card. So if you want to be in our weekly notices, I mean, really all it takes is, hey, here's your capability statement. Looking forward to working with you guys. Please keep me informed, and no problem. I'll put you on the next week's notice. Actually, I usually send them out every Tuesdays, unless I get pulled in 5 different directions. So that would be my recommendation. Over.
I'd like to add that this is a best practice that Mike has started within the district. There's nothing in writing or regulation that states that we have to do this. So he is doing this to go above and beyond to further try to reach out to firms that we know have marketed the district. So I don't want anybody on the call to think like there's a designated spot that you need to have your name, your information, because technically there is not. Again, a best practice that Mike has developed as a result of folks who have marketed the Baltimore district.
Excellent. Thank you. The next question is from Matt. Do subcontracting dollars count toward your goals?
No, they do not. Only prime contract awards count towards our goals. We only track our prime contract awards for the goaling process. Did you want to say something else, Mike?
And you are right. Tamika is right on that. But I will say where they do get tracked is subcontracting achievement with contract with subcontracting plan, which is, but they get rolled up, but I believe all the way to the DOD. Is that correct, Tamika? Is that how it really works?
They don't track them right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I think they just get rolled up into the DoD reporting, but individually, Baltimore, no, we do not report on that.
Thank you. The next question is from Mark. How much of your work is already locked into IDIQs and MATOCs? Do you have on-ramps to those vehicles? And how much of your work is open market? So 3-part question.
Excellent question. Go ahead, Mike. I'm gonna let you take a stab at it because you're the numbers guy.
I've never ran those numbers. I feel, I don't have certain numbers in front of me. And Tamika, what do you think? It's a lot. A lot of our work is done off of indefinite delivery contracts. So that's your MATOCs, SATOCs, BPAs, and JOCs. I mean, very good question. I want to feel like is it, man, I'm thinking anywhere between 60, 75%. I mean, we do a lot that way.
Great.
But it's a good question. I do not know the number. It's a lot. It's more than half, I would argue. What was the other part of that question? I missed that. I'm sorry.
We do not currently do on and off ramping. However, this office is we're going to be proposing that contracting consider on ramping. What, I messed that up. I apologize. But the reason being is because recently I mentioned the $499 million METOC. We've actually been having trouble with the awardees actually wanting to do the work that's afforded to them. So this office has been talking about trying to do an on-ramp, off-ramp for any future or upcoming IDIQs. Over.
Excellent. Thank you. We have time for one more question. So as an SDVOSB in tech, we are proposing software enhancements for the USACE HEC's CWMS under NAICS code 541511. We're glad to see the small business set aside. How can SDVOSBs better support the USACE's mission, even if our role is a small part of it?
So, I mean, I think the important thing is that we always say, and we can't say it enough, and I know it's hard, but respond to that market research, right? Showing, because that allows us 2 things, right? It shows that you're interested. That's one thing. 2, now you're proving you're capable, and hopefully the information we're asking for is not burdensome, which I hear sometimes it is, and I can see that. It's that anything over $250,000 with simplified acquisition threshold, the contracting officer can say that if they have at least 2 interested and capable, in this case, service disabled veteran and small businesses. And here's the big part. The FAR says they shall consider setting it aside, and they're already equally service disabled, women-owned, hub zone, 8A, already equally that you shall consider to set it aside. Truthfully, though, and this is where we try to persuade and influence Tamika and myself, because we'll talk about here's where we're at in our goals. Here's the firms. We have past performance. Some of these firms, like, it's convincing them to do that set aside. They don't have to by regulation as it stands today, because they're allowed that leverage to say, I'm going to do a small business set aside, but we make them, right? We make them justify why it's not in the government's interest to do that set aside to a small business program. I mean, that's all we can do. So maybe it's not the rule of 2 we used to call it, or we still call it. Maybe they need 3 service disabled or 4 service disabled. But we can't force that conversation unless we have at least 2, and then we can start that conversation. And then again, we just try to persuade and influence, but in the end, it's their call, and we recognize that.
Thank you. Well, thank you again to our presenters today, Michael Stearns and Tamika Gray, both deputies for small business with the USACE, for a very informative presentation and question and answer discussion. As a reminder, after today's event, we ask that you please complete a brief survey evaluating today's session. We also encourage you to continue to visit the VA-OSDBU events page for upcoming programs that may be of interest to you and your network at vetbiz.va.gov/events. To everyone who has joined today's session, thank you on behalf of VA-OSDBU and Strategic Outreach Program, or the Strategic Outreach and Communications Program. This now concludes today's session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You.